subject.
You didn't tell them that. The tapes will prove you're innocent.
Okay.
But if, in fact, you went to Manhattan and said, I'm lying to the American people, and the voters have a right to know.
No, you're the liar. You're the lying guy up here. You're the one of the one. You're the one. You're the one. Now, let me just tell you. Let me just say, excuse me. I've given my answer, Lion Ted. I've given my answer.
All right, let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. We have more to get to.
Gentlemen, the next topic to discuss is terrorism. Senator Rubio, ISIS is a big topic of conversation on Facebook. We have a map that shows the conversation about ISIS around the country. You propose sending a larger number of American ground troops to help defeat ISIS in Syria and Iraq. But military commanders say the biggest ISIS threat to Europe in particular now is coming from Libya, not Syria. So just to be clear, putting more U.S. ground troops in Iraq and Syria, are you also ready to send U.S. ground troops on the ground in Libya?
Well, Brett, what I've argued from the very beginning is ISIS, in order to defeat ISIS, you must deny them operating spaces. This is how ISIS, or any radical group for that matter, can grow. It's how Al-Qaeda was able to carry out 9/11. Is that the Taliban gave them an operating space in Afghanistan. Today, that operating space has largely been based in Iraq and Syria, but I've been warning about the Libyan presence for the better part of 2 years. So they need to be targeted wherever they have an operating space. They do need to be defeated on the ground by a ground force made up primarily of Sunni Arabs themselves. This is a radical Sunni movement. They can only be defeated if they are driven out and the territories held by Sunni Arabs. But it will require a significant number of American special operators in combination with an increase in airstrikes. And that will include, if necessary, operating spaces in Libya, which in fact they are using to project into the Sinai against Egypt and ultimately into Europe as well.
Governor Kasich, would you put ground troops in Libya?
Well, first of all, just to be clear, not only did I serve for 18 years on the Defense Committee, more than anybody on this stage, but secondly, I was called into the Pentagon after 9/11 to help Secretary Rumsfeld with some of his difficulties. I will say, look, let me tell you what happened with Libya, and I pointed out in the last debate. Hillary Clinton worked aggressively to depose Muammar Gaddafi. We had no business doing it. He was working with us. He was cooperating with us. He denuclearized. And now they pushed him out, and now we have a fertile ground for ISIS. Fortunately, in Libya, there's only a few cities on the coast because most of Libya is a desert. The fact of the matter is we absolutely have to be, and not just with special forces, I mean, that's not going to work. Come on, you got to go back to the invasion when we pushed Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. We have to be there on the ground in significant numbers. We do have to include our Muslim Arab friends to work with us on that, and we have to be in the air. And it should be a broad coalition made up of the kinds of people that were involved when we defeated Saddam. Now, you got to be on the ground and in the air, both in Syria and Iraq. And at some point, we will have to deal with Libya. I am very concerned about ISIS getting their hands on the oil fields in Libya and being able to fund their operations. The fact is, cool, calm, deliberate, effective, take care of the job, and then come home. That's what we need to do with our military foreign policy.
Mr. Trump, just yesterday, almost 100 foreign policy experts signed on to an open letter refusing to support you, saying you're embracing expansive use of torture is inexcusable. General Michael Hayden, former CIA director, NSA director, and other experts have said that when you ask the U.S. military to carry out some of your campaign promises, specifically targeting terrorist families and also the use of interrogation methods more extreme than waterboarding, the military will refuse because they've been trained to turn down and refuse illegal orders. So what would you do as Commander-in-Chief if the U.S. military refused to carry out those orders?
They won't refuse. They're not going to refuse me, believe me.
But they're illegal.
Let me tell you, you look at the Middle East, they're chopping off heads. They're chopping off the heads of Christians and anybody else that happens to be in the way. They're drowning people in steel cages. And now we're talking about waterboarding. This really started with Ted. A question was asked of Ted last 2 debates ago about waterboarding. And Ted was, having a hard time with that question, to be totally honest with you. They then came to me, what do you think of waterboarding? I said, it's fine. And if we want to go stronger, I'd go stronger too. Because frankly, that's the way I feel. Can you imagine these people, these animals over in the Middle East that chop off heads, sitting around talking and seeing that we're having a hard problem with waterboarding? We should go for waterboarding, and we should go tougher than waterboarding.
But targeting terrorist families?
And I'm a leader. I've always been a leader. I've never had any problem leading people. If I say do it, they're going to do it. That's what leadership is all about.
Even targeting terrorist families?
Well, look, you know, when a family flies into the World Trade Center, a man flies into the World Trade Center, and his family gets sent back to where they were going, and I think most of you know where they went. And by the way, it wasn't Iraq. But they went back to a certain territory. They knew what was happening. The wife knew exactly what was happening. They left 2 days earlier with respect to the World Trade Center, and they went back to where they went, and they watched their husband on television flying into the World Trade Center, flying into the Pentagon, and probably trying to fly into the White House, except we had some very, very brave souls on that third plane. All right? Senator Cruz, you have no problem with it.